Yes, I'm back again with Integrated Science Grade 7. I'm called Teacher Zamalek. In short, you can call me Teacher Zam, your always favorite science teacher. Now, the subtopic of today, or rather the substrand of today, is called laboratory safety rules. Last time we met, we talked about the hazards and we saw the dangers within the laboratory, the causes of such hazards, and the safety measures that we can use or apply in order to prevent ourselves from being harmed, or rather from getting the accidents. Now, laboratory safety rules. These are some of the rules that we need to know, we need to apply as we work within a laboratory setup. More so, the student or the learners who have a laboratory in their respective schools should consider these rules for the safety of their health and the safety of their fellows who are also within the laboratory, and more so when you are doing or carrying out your experiments. Now, in the laboratory, we have apparatus, we have equipments within the laboratory. Those apparatus are the things that enable us or allow us do our experiments. They are the things that allows us carry out our experiments. Those apparatus, some are glass in nature. You remember I talked about the hazards including the glass apparatus. These glass apparatus, when you work or carry out an experiment with them and you break them, they can cut your hand, they can cut any part of your body, the skin. When they cut you, that is an accident. Now, a cause of that can be carelessness within the laboratory. As you do experiment, I told you, for you to be safe, you have to know the hazards, this particular thing you're using, be it the chemical, be it the apparatus, how hazardous it can be. And for that reason, you must be able to work carefully as you're doing your experiments within the laboratory. So you must observe, being careful. That is what you need to observe as you're doing your experiments. Now, these rules, I hope you have a laboratory in your school, but if you lack one, know that at the door there are some rules. For a good laboratory to be called a well set up laboratory, there must be rules at the doorstep, so that before you enter, you can as well read the rules. So before you carry out any experiment, check whether there are rules within that laboratory. Yes, so those are the rules that I want you to know. And even if you've checked, you have to know them, because minus these rules, your result might be inaccurate as you're doing your experiment. That is one thing that can happen. Number two, accident can accrue as you carry out your experiments. That is number two. So you realize that there must be rules to be followed. And these rules include the following. Number one rule for safety is work carefully. Work carefully. Work carefully. Yes, you have to work carefully as you're doing your experiment. Why? Because carelessness can cause accidents, just like I've mentioned, can cause accidents or result to inaccurate results. Yes, that is number one rule. So you need to work carefully as you do your experiments within the laboratory. Be careful, be very careful. And I told you, initially that you have to be cautious about these hazards. So as you work within the laboratory, whether you're working with the acids, whether you're working with the bases, know that those particular chemicals you work or deal with within the laboratory can cause accident. And then for accurate results, so what you need to do is just work carefully as you're carrying out your experiment. And if you don't understand a particular thing, there are some procedures given before you carry out your experiment. Even if you want to do an experiment based on whichever thing you told by the teacher, make sure you read the procedure. So work carefully, following the procedures, following the instructions being given by your teacher. That is number one, safety laboratory rule. Number two, remember we are going to handle chemicals. We are going to handle those very hazardous chemicals, very dangerous. So what do we need to do? Number two, wear gloves. Wear gloves. That is for the hands. We have to put on some gloves. Number two, we can do aprons or laboratory or lab coats. We wear gloves, aprons, or lab coats, or rather we can wear safety goggles. We can wear safety goggles. These are for the eyes. Now, remember, as you do experiment and you're working with the chemicals, some chemicals might spill or they may attack or come into contact with your eyes. So for you to ensure that your eyes are safety, you have to wear the safety eye goggles. And then the lab coats. This is for the entire body protection. You wear them, or the aprons. And then the gloves for anything. Before you do any experiment, you must have the gloves. Because minus the gloves, you can harm your hands. Minus the gloves, you can harm your body, or the entire skin will be harmed if you don't have this safety equipment. Number three, what do we need to do? Do not drink or eat in the laboratory. Wow, another important safety laboratory rule. Do not drink or eat in the laboratory. There are some students, there are some learners. It is a laboratory time. You have been taken with your teacher to the lab. By your teacher to the lab, your teacher has instructed you that today we are going to do an experiment. Let's say you want to go and do experiment based on acids and bases and indicators. Acids, bases, and indicators. You want to go and do such an experiment. The acids, bases, and indicators, we'll learn them later on in the second topic. Now you are told to go and carry out an experiment based on acids, based on bases or indicators. And then you yourself, you have carried, let's say, a drink with you, and the teacher is not seeing you, and then you have some mandazi or chapati kept in your pocket, and then you decide to go to the laboratory with these particular food items, and then upon reaching the laboratory, you are instructed to add acid. Add what? Acid to water, and then you are like eating and you are adding the acid. Eating and adding the acid, touching the chemicals and as well eating. There is one thing that will happen to you. What is it? You will ingest these acids and bases. And once you ingest them, you know what will happen. You will have a problem with your stomach setup. So you are not supposed to drink or rather eat within the laboratory. It is very dangerous when you eat or drink in the laboratory, because you will ingest harmful substances that will therefore cause harm to your body. So you are not supposed to drink or eat in the laboratory. It is advisable not to, because what? You will ingest harmful substances in your body, and that is the reason as to why we are told not to drink or eat in the laboratory. A question might come, be asking you, explain why, or explain the reason behind not drinking or rather eating in the laboratory. And I have said, as you carry out your experiment and eat, there are some fumes of chemicals you are ingesting. And once you ingest them, they will automatically bring a negative reaction within your stomach. So ingestion of harmful substances will therefore harm you when you drink or eat in the laboratory. Number 4 rule: do not carry out any experiment. Do not carry out any experiment without the teacher's instructions. The teacher's instructions. Very good. Another very important rule you need to put into consideration, that you are not supposed to carry out any experiment without the teacher's instruction. Sometimes the teacher is not there, but there is a lab technician in your laboratories. So what you need to do is to first of all ask for the instructions. A good learner or rather student who wants to work in a laboratory setup must be able to ask for the instructions. You need to be instructed, because it is your first time carrying out such an experiment. And even if it is your second time, you want to do it perfectly. Minus the teacher or lab technician, you are not going to do it perfectly. So you have to adhere to the instructions. You have to get the instructions so that you carry out the experiment in the effective manner, in the good manner, or in the best way possible. So that is number 4. Number 5. Now, in case of any fire outbreak, what can you do within a laboratory? Sometimes you're doing your experiment, you're carrying out your experiment, and then all of a sudden something happens, and then the fire, you see flames of fire coming out. So what do you need to do? Now, in case of fire outbreak, in case of fire outbreak, use sand. You can use fire blankets. You can use fire blankets, or you can use fire extinguishers. To put out fires, or rather extinguish fire. Extinguish fires. Now, that is a very, very important laboratory safety rule that you need to put into consideration as you're working in the laboratory. And then all of a sudden, unknowingly, there's some fire outbreak within your laboratory setup. What you need to do, use sand, or use fire blanket, or rather fire what? Fire extinguishers. So you learn more about fire, types of fires, and how we can use sand to extinguish such fires, how we can use fire blanket to smoothen such fires, or rather extinguish such fires, or we can use fire extinguishers to put out such fires. Now, to put out means to just extinguish. I know that one you taught in English. So in case of any fire outbreak within a laboratory setup, use the following. Use the following. And another very following important rule is that you should identify the fire. You should identify so number 6 said you should identify the fire assembly areas. The fire assembly. So you should identify the fire assembly. Area for alarms. Now, in case of any alarm, you need to identify the fire assembly so that you guys or the learners within that particular laboratory setup can assemble there. In case of any accident, we can know the number of those who are affected and those who are safe. Now, you are supposed to identify the fire assembly area so that in case of accident, we are alarmed to assemble in such areas. So that is another rule that you need to put into consideration. Now, how about when a chemical drop on your eye? What are you supposed to do in case of a chemical drop? In case of a chemical drop on your eyes, you are supposed to wash. You are supposed to wash your eyes with running water for about 12 to 15 minutes. Now, that is another very important rule. Now, in case of a chemical dropping on your eye, you are carrying out your experiment within the laboratory, and most of the laboratory, the experiments, we use chemicals within the laboratory. And the chemicals are majorly used. They are the main reagents or things that are being used within a laboratory in carrying out experiment. Now, in case of a chemical drop on your eyes, you should wash your eyes with running water for about 12 to 15 minutes. That is very important. That is very important. And if it persists, so what you should do is to see or seek medication later after washing what? Washing with running water. So you need to, first of all, run a cold water on your eyes for about 12 to 15 minutes in case of any chemical drop. And if the damage is too big, or if there is a damage that is too dangerous, seek medication later. Or you can visit a healthcare center. That is number 7. There are so many, but I will only provide the ones that I'll provide for today. Now, number 1, we work carefully, wear gloves, do not drink Do not carry out any experiment without the instruction in case of fire outbreak. Now, always, another thing you need to do, always label. You are supposed to provide labels. Always label your apparatus. Always label your apparatus. Always label your apparatus. Always label your apparatus before carrying out experiment or experiments. Before carrying out experiments. Always label your apparatus before carrying out experiments to avoid confusion. To avoid confusion. To avoid confusion and therefore for accurate results. So you can also add to avoid confusion and for accurate results. A very important laboratory safety rule. Now look at how we're moving. You have to know these rules, for they will be helpful as you carrying out your experiments. As you carrying out your experiment. Look at it. So you are supposed to label the apparatus before carrying out any experiment to avoid confusion or for accurate result. For accurate result. Now, in case, how about when you get an electrical shock, or maybe there is electricity within the laboratory and there is a shock that has happened to a learner or a person carrying out an experiment within the laboratory. What are you supposed to do? Now, in case of electrical shock, remember these are some of the hazards we talked about. In case of electrical shocks, what we need to first of all do, we need to put out, just the way we were doing here, we make sure that the electricity source is put out first of all. So you have to make sure you switch it off. So you need to switch off the electricity source and remove the casualty. Remove the casualty, and casualty is the person that is in danger. Remove the casualty. Remove the casualty by using an insulated object. You are not supposed to use your hands in such cases, because once you use your hands, you are also going to get shocked. If you use something that is wet as well, you will be getting electrical shocks. So what you need to do, switch off the electrical source first of all, and then later on remove the person affected by using an insulated what? Object. That is number 9, laboratory safety rule. Laboratory safety rule. There are so many. And I want you to outline, 5 other laboratory safety rules other laboratory safety rules? For me, that is a question for you. So as a learner, can you try from other sources outline 5 laboratory safety rules? So try to outline. If you can have at least 5 plus this 9, you'll have 14. I'm certain that in an examination, you cannot be asked 14 laboratory safety rules, or rather you cannot be asked 9. The safety laboratory cannot exceed 5 in an examination. So master the 9, and as well you can add some 5. I think you will be good to go. Have a nice time. In case of a question, ask me down there within the comment section. I will respond. Otherwise, thank you for listening. Thank you for paying attention in this class. That is great. Let's meet next time.